I'll start off by admitting that the fear to change my life isn't a challenge for me. As I shared in my episode about unboxing myself, I've changed my career when I went from marketing, managing marketing campaigns, to grants management, and now to being an entrepreneur. And pretty soon I'll remain an entrepreneur as I'm transitioning into or enter into the new world of becoming a philanthropist. So, another fear I don't have is the fear of failure. That could be because I don't see failure as an option, and if I fail from what I thought the outcome would be, I see it as a lesson, and so it's not really a failure. Or at least I don't see it as a failure. And I think those two inherent approaches to my life are part of the reason why I'm not afraid to change my life, and I'm not afraid of failure. However, of course, like everyone else, I have other fears, and I'm working through them. I'm working on my fear of what others think of me. That's something that has been a burden throughout my life, but thankfully, as I get older, that burden has become lighter and lighter. To be honest, to have a business and be visible for your business actually requires that you chip away at that specific fear, because I've hosted a number of webinars and Instagram lives, and I have, the podcast that I'm doing here, and so many of the things that I've done either for my business or other things that I'm working on. That fear of what others think is something that you have to put in the back of your mind if you have a bigger goal that you're trying to accomplish. I also have a fear of rejection, like I think many people do. I'm working on that one too. So I wanted to be transparent about my own fears before I talk about this episode's topic, which is pushing past the fear to change your life. I'm talking about the changes that will lead to an improvement or even several improvements in your life and, of course, in mine. So stick around for the Age Has No Limit podcast. Don't forget to subscribe. It's the Age Has No Limit podcast. We're here to show and prove that your age shouldn't prevent you from designing and living the life you want. I'm your host, Patrice Davis. Let's get started. Welcome back to the show. If this is your first time listening to the Age Has No Limit podcast or watching the video, I'm Patrice Davis, the host of the show. And in today's episode, we're talking about fear, specifically the fear to make changes in your life, specifically those changes that will lead to an improvement in your life. If those are the fears that are necessary to live life on your own terms, maybe open a business, maybe pursue a passion, get the love and intimacy you deserve and be willing to give it back, of course, or just redesign your life to suit you and where your priorities as of today. So I want to first and foremost, though, honor the trauma and other challenges that cause many of us to experience crippling fear. So I don't want to make light of those of us that are dealing with, crippling fear. So whether it's the fear to drive again because you've had, an accident, or the fear to socialize due to a trauma. So maybe it's early childhood trauma or social trauma or physical abuse, or you've experienced a natural disaster, or even intimate partner violence. So I do want to start off by making sure that we honor those the fears that are born out of those experiences. But we're just, so I do want to make sure we're having a conversation though about the fear to change your life to improve it, if you haven't experienced debilitating fear due to a trauma of some sort. Let me reiterate that fear to change isn't my fear. Of course, I'd like that change to be planned change. I think we would all like that. I think when it's planned change, you can anticipate and prepare for any discomfort. Of course, I haven't, lived through an unplanned change that's been foisted upon me because I live in a war zone or some large social disruption. We know of a social disruption that happened a few years ago, and I'll actually detail how I dealt with that change. If it's unplanned change, I believe enough in myself and my abilities to make the best of the situation. For example, and here's where I talk a little bit about how I dealt with that unplanned change that we all had to deal with starting in March of 2020. So during the pandemic, I experienced some fear and anxiety because this unplanned change was happening all around me and everyone else. And it was broadcast on TV every day. We were listening to it on the radio. We were seeing, so many things happening around us. And it was just a radical change to all of us. And we had to sit still and absorb it, not necessarily absorb it, but we had to sort of be sit in the front seat of this thing that is happening. We couldn't avoid it. That's the point I'm trying to make here. Now, how did I deal with it? As I said, I dealt with fear, I dealt with anxiety, definitely experienced more anxiety than I've ever experienced in my life during that time. But here's what I did, because I knew several months ago that I'd started a new business and I wanted to make some momentum on the business. And I was able to make some momentum around September of 2020. But I dealt with it by praying and saying affirmations every morning. I did yoga 3 to 5 times a week. Prior to that, I did yoga. I'm speaking primarily of vinyasa flow. Prior to that, I did that maybe once or twice a week, but I upped it to like 3 to 5 times a week because I really wanted that sense of calm and sense of control that I believe that doing yoga and the physical challenges, it forces you to confront, and the sense of peace you feel after you've spent time stretching in silence and really focusing on your body's movements. So I did that 3 to 5 days a week. And so I went inside, right? I guess, inside my mind to cope with what was going on outside. I couldn't change that, but I could change the way I coped with this phenomenon that was all around us. And I realized that people cope with change differently. The way I do it is certainly going to be different from the way others do it. So I do want to make sure, again, I honor that. Not everyone, deals with life's challenges in the same way. So some of us, however, will put off changing our lives for the better, and they'll do it for years because they are afraid of, the discomfort. They're afraid of the uncertainty, and they're also, of course, very afraid of what others think. So I'll move on to share an email I just read this morning from my business coach. She's the business coach for quite a few other people as well. So this was an email that she likely sent out to her entire distribution list. So it wasn't directed to me personally, but it was about the fear of rejection. And it included an image of one of her most recent public social media posts. And it read, maybe you're not making money in your business because not being rejected is more important to you than making money. And it was a, clutch my pearls moment, not because this resonated with me specifically, because I'm okay with being rejected in business because I know the opportunity that's best suited for me is coming, right? But I figuratively clutched my pearls because it was so direct and so in alignment with what we're talking about today. To prepare for today's episode, and really for every episode, I try to get out of my own head and learn more by seeing what others have written about a topic or watch a video or two just to better understand a topic in a broader context. Because almost every episode that I will record for the podcast or have recorded are based on either my own experiences, my thoughts about about the topics that I bring to the fore. But again, this isn't about me sharing what I think to everyone out there. It's about me sharing what I think and then comparing it and contrasting with what others think or others have written about, or experts in the space. They may have written a paper or done some research, and so it's important for me to link myself with each episode, every each topic, but at the same time make sure that I expand it for you, the listeners. So I started off, though, to prepare by watching a video by Brendan Burchard. So for those of you who don't know, Brendan is known as the world's number one high performance coach. He's a best-selling author. He's a motivational speaker, and he's won all the related accolades that one would expect for someone of his stature. And I've heard of Brendan. As a matter of fact, I think I was on his email distribution list. And but I never really listened to him. I may have read again one or two of those emails. I found and listened to his How to Overcome Fear talk, and it really broke down the three types of pain that people try to avoid, due to fear. So his thinking or his position is that fear is, something that we experience when we're trying to avoid a certain kind of pain. And there are three types of pain that he noted, and that one was loss pain. And the way he describes it is, if I change my life, I'll experience some kind of loss. I might lose something. It might be security of a job or a certain relationship or a certain connection or a certain benefit. And his position is, instead of thinking about what you will lose, really kind of flip the script and think about what you'll gain and change your thinking to think about what you'll gain. When I say change your thinking, I literally mean when a negative thought comes into your mind, consciously stop the negative thought and consciously tell yourself you will think the opposite. I do this all the time. Maybe not as much, because the more you do this, the better your that muscle becomes. And so it is a conscious effort. And of course, the more you do it, again, as in my case, the better you'll get at changing your thoughts to reflect what you want. Now, the second pain he described was process pain. And that is, the process of change is hard. Like he used the example of a person who wants to quit smoking cigarettes. So the process of changing to become a non-smoker would require the smoker to, experience maybe physical withdrawals, maybe emotional issues as a result of no longer relying on the nicotine fix, whatever some of the other withdrawal symptoms are. That process is something that sometimes a person who wants to quit smoking but has not fears, and as a result, that's that process pain. And his position was, think instead of the change as a gain, not a loss. And that the challenge itself will empower you. So going through the withdrawal will make you strong on the other side, because when you're again confronted with a cigarette, and you will be, because they're legal and they're everywhere, you've had you've gone through a process to make it easier for you to reject or deny yourself another cigarette. And the third pain that he described was called the outcome pain. And that's, you're scared of what ifs. You think instead of, you're thinking a lot about, the what ifs and the negative what ifs. His position is to think instead of a positive outcome, to actually visualize and expect the outcome we actually want. So it ties back to an episode that I recorded previously about visualization, and how if you visualize the outcome you want, that and you continuously do that, you're more likely to get closer to that outcome, instead of visualizing or allowing the what ifs, the negative thoughts, to take you down the path of what you are actually running away from. So his point overall, and we know it, is that fear is contemplative thoughts we're rerunning too often in our minds. We are really, and we know this, fear is in the mind, and the more we think about the fears, the more they're likely to occur in our lives, or they're likely to prevent us from making a change, or making that change in our lives that we know will lead us to the life that we want. He also went a little bit further. He kind of went for the juggler, and he said fear is bad management of our own mental faculties. And so I just wanted to, that's his position on that. But if you think about the fact that it is, mostly in our minds, and we're not talking about fear born out of trauma. We're not talking about fear that happened as a result of being in a war zone, or again, we're talking about the standard fear that many of us experience, that we allow to keep us stuck, or keep us in the same situation, or keep us from really living the fulfilled lives that we want, the redesigned lives that we want, because we're afraid of change. We have some folks also who think, well, I've lived this long in this way and I'm making it so far. And, I'm relatively healthy. I'm relatively happy. And I'm going to stay in the situation because it's good enough. Now, if you want to shift away from a good enough life to one where you are fulfilled in all of the areas that are important to you, then it is really important for you to really think about what you need to do to get past that fear to change. Now, another point, and the final point that I'll note here that he made was that the more you know or understand the fear itself, the better you can deal with it. And so, understanding the pains that you're trying to avoid, again, they are, the loss pain, the process pain, and the outcome pain, then the better you'll be able to think yourself through to the other side where you decide to move forward because you now understand how it's really your thoughts, it's really your collection of thoughts that are keeping you stuck. So let's define the fear of change. According to a masterclass article, and those of you who may have seen, the masterclass, they're typically hosted by a certain, different people who have, achieved major success in certain areas of their lives. And they are invited to host a masterclass. You may have seen it on a flight. I know there's a certain airline that has a collection of classes. You may have seen it on YouTube, but Masterclass also, of course, has blogs and articles that you can find online. So I did find a Masterclass article that's called The Fear of Change: 5 Ways to Overcome the Fear of Change. And they note that fear of change is typically characterized by intense feelings of fear and anxiety in the face of changes, both big and small. And that really stuck with me there because there are people who are afraid of big change, and we can understand maybe moving to a new city or changing jobs or moving to a new country. That is considered, a big change in one's life. But then there are other people that are also afraid of small changes, and they experience fear and anxiety as a result of making even small changes. Then they also described, and I think this is important that they did that, the extreme version of this fear is called, and I'm going to try my best here, is metathesiophobia. So I hope I said that correctly. Metathesiophobia, and is characterized by increased self doubt, lack of self esteem, panic attacks, even social anxiety, and more. So, for those of you who are dealing with metathesiophobia, and I like saying that word, I understand that this, some of what I'm sharing is may not be applicable because there is a deeper or underlying challenge that one must overcome to make the change that you may need to make in your life. But they did provide several recommendations. Again, there were 6 ways that they recommended. And so I'm going to go through those 6 now. So the first one is to rely on your support system. And I really, really agree with this. And the recommendation really is to surround yourself with people who can offer support as you navigate big changes. And I'm reminded of there are a number of Facebook groups. I belong to, I would say, about 10 Facebook groups. There is a specific Facebook group for women who want to move to another country, specifically Black women who want to move to another country, Black American women who want to move to another country, or, women and, but that particular site, along with several of the others, provides, really great support, information, addresses, resources for women who are making this really big change in their lives. And I won't say the name of the group, but I do want to let you all know that this kind of support system I see with my own eyes. I've experienced it, that they help people make those decisions and help them understand that their thoughts about this big change could be seen as normal. It's not abnormal. Some of these people may be having discussions with their family or friends about making a big change. Maybe they want to move to Costa Rica or move to Colombia or move to Portugal or move to Ghana, and their friends and family are saying, what do you, that's crazy, why would you want to move? This person, however, then has that support system in that group to help them understand that, oh, by the way, here are 10 women who've moved to that specific country. Here's the restaurant that they recommend. When you first get here, here are the 5 things that you need to do. So that support system helps that person feel, much better about the change they want to make. And of course, there are a number of other support systems, but that's the one I happen to remember. And then the second thing they recommend is to learn to recognize and cope with negative thoughts. And they say that this stems from the fear of the unknown and the unknown. And they recommend that you flip the script. Just as I said earlier, flip the script. Instead of allowing yourself to think that negative thought, consciously make the change, consciously force yourself to change to think the opposite, and just keep doing that every time those negative thoughts appear, or you just flip it. And then, and again, I hope I don't sound flippant by suggesting that you flip your thoughts. I do this, and so again, I don't want to sound flippant, but I did want to make the recommendation. It's worked for me, and I believe that it may work for you as well. So, another thing they recommend is to ground yourself in the present moment to avoid focusing on the hypothetical scenarios. Grounding yourself may mean, taking deep breaths for a minute or two, doing yoga, practicing yoga as I did much more during the pandemic, a lot less now. Maybe doing some mindfulness meditation, journaling. That reminds me of the savers that I've mentioned before. As I mentioned before, I practice what are called savers, something I learned in a book called The Miracle Morning for Entrepreneurs. And savers, again, stands for silence, affirmation, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing. So again, starting my day before I come into my office to work, I practice silence, affirmations, I visualize, I exercise sometimes, and then of course I read and I write. And just that, grounding myself in the morning, and really thinking through either the challenge of the day, or uh, preparing myself for any challenges that may happen. I don't necessarily expect challenges, or sometimes it gives me the encouragement, or the sense of feeling empowered if I know I'm either going to be giving a talk later that day, I'll be doing a presentation, or I'll be meeting with, a client that I really, really want to join our firm. And so those savers just helps to ground me so that as my day begins and throughout my day, I'm feeling much better about what I aim to accomplish. I'm feeling better about the relationships, my working relationships with my team members. So again, just really wanted to think through, how the savers work for me, and how grounding yourself in general is just a great way to set yourself up for the day, and certainly to set yourself up for any life change. The next thing they recommend, and I know several people that deal with this, and that is letting go of perfectionism, because you're striving for perfection. It can lead to irrational fear, and of course, what it does, according to the article, it narrows your outlook and it limits your ability to consider other possibilities. And I just really, really like that they spelled that out so clearly, because I personally know of people who are afraid of change because they're waiting for that perfect moment, and they wait and wait and wait, and time doesn't stop for anyone. So another thing that reminds me of is, when I was in a program, one of the things that the coach mentioned was that for those of us who were new to business and we were new to putting ourselves out there as a representation of our business, that sometimes we have to do things before it's perfect, just to get up the nerve to do it. And she would call it launch it ugly, right? So if we wanted to launch a new product, or launch our business, or launch a website, sometimes it's better to launch it, quote, ugly, not necessarily ugly, but imperfect, right? If it's not perfect, but you've still done it, you would have gained momentum. And quite frankly, you would have also learned, okay, what the imperfections are. Maybe you launched a website, and because you launched it ugly, or launched it imperfectly, you learn that your contact page should include these details. And so that's one of the things you learn from launching it before it's perfect. But the idea is that you would have gained momentum. People would have come to your website and learned a little bit about you. They may not have been able to reach out and contact you as effectively as you would have liked, but at least you would have gained momentum, and maybe you would have had a few conversations. All of that is better than not launching it and waiting for people to find you, for clients to find you, for customers to find you. That doesn't happen if you're waiting for perfection. And then number five is to seek professional help. And so just wanted to, for those of us where that change is a little bit more of a challenge, just know that, there are options out there for you to actually get the help that you need. So I'm going to actually share my personal approach of dealing with fear. And think it's important. I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, and I'll share it again because it's just, I did provide some insight into the way I coped with the fear of the unknown during the pandemic. But now I'm going to share a little bit more about how I cope with just, fear in general. So the first thing I do is I always consider the alternative, and quite often, not changing is worse than changing. So, for example, if I decide that I want to move to another country, I always think about, well, what is the alternative to moving to that to another country? That's just an example. Or if I want to make a big change in my business, and I know that that big change will lead to more of a certain kind of success, even though I'm afraid, I may be afraid of what that may mean, I decide, well, the alternative would be to not change and to settle for, whatever staying unchanged would look like. And then I also choose to see the change as an adventure. I begin to learn as much as I can about what that change entails. And I guess the learning itself, I'm a naturally curious person. So even learning what it takes to implement the change, I see it as an adventure. I see it as an opportunity to learn more about something that I don't know a lot about. So that's, I guess, a part of flipping the script and learning more about whatever that fear is, or learning more about what the change will lead to, and making that almost fun. I also typically take tiny steps toward the big change. And as I learn more about what the change entails, I'll actually implement some of the little steps that it takes to bring about the larger change. And I do that because I want to gain momentum. It's interesting because even as I gain momentum, I may learn in step three, this isn't really what I want, but I would have at least learned because I would have taken some of those steps and I would have gained momentum. So I just want to give you guys, some examples of the way that I approach change. And the fourth way that I typically, push forward or push past the fear to change is I do it anyway. And then I intentionally mentally check out, because otherwise I would be overanalyzing what I did. And I have to do this because I tend to overanalyze almost everything. So, and I'm speaking maybe of the fear of a speaking. Maybe I have a big speaking engagement, and there I know there are going to be almost 100 people in the room. That's a big audience for me. For some folks, that may not be a big audience at all, but I know there may be 80 to 100 people in the room, and that has happened. And I decided, I'm here. I've made it all the way here. I might as well do the best that I can. And I mentally check out so that I'm not overanalyzing what they may think, or if I, am I, is, how do I look? Am I sharing the information effectively? All of those things I decide to push to the back of my mind and just keep moving forward. The last time that exact thing happened to me, I had to do a training on in-person training in Denver, Colorado, and it was at a fiscal conference, and there were 80 to 100 people in that room, and it was the first time I'd done a live training in front of an audience. I've done a lot of live training, in my previous positions or online, but not in front of a large audience. a large-ish audience. And I remember thinking to myself, Patrice, you got this. You know this information. You've prepared everything that you need to prepare. And I went up on that stage, started training, and once the butterflies went away, for they hung around for maybe 30 seconds, and then after that I decided to keep going. I used a little bit of humor to break the ice. I'd already over prepared, so I knew exactly what was on the slides. I know a lot of that information intuitively because that's my expertise, and it went really really well. And I was actually really proud of myself for doing that. So that's not necessarily a change in my life, but it's an example of a change or a fear that I had to overcome. And as a result, I'm less afraid when I have to do any kind of live speaking engagement. So there you have it. I wanted to do this episode because, like all of us, we know of people who are afraid to change, even if that change will lead to an improvement in their lives. They sometimes make excuses. They say things like, that's just how I am. They wait for life to happen to them, and they're proud of being stubborn. And I'll, really end by saying this. I also have a small fear of change, and I've said it before, maybe not fear to change my life, but like a lot of people, there's a small amount of fear whenever you're going to do something new. But like I said, I do it anyway because I believe life is too short. And I really want to maximize the joy, the adventure, the love, the travel, and the positive experiences that I can experience while I'm, still here. So I'll push past the fear. And then hopefully, after this episode, you'll decide to start pushing past some of the fears that you may experience, especially any fear that's preventing you from improving your life or redesigning your life the way you see fit. Now, I'd also like for you to let me know if you're afraid of change and if you remember some changes you avoided because of fear. I would love for you to share that. If you're watching this on YouTube, love to hear the comments. If there's a certain fear that you know has held you back, I would love for you to share that. If you are listening to this on your favorite streaming service, many times you can certainly leave a comment. So leave a comment and let us know. And I do want to make two final points. First, I'd like to thank my producer, Matt Wong of Graftable. We are a new team. He's been fantastic at helping me understand some of the technical details of recording the podcast. And I really, really appreciate the work that he's been doing to edit the final episodes, the ones that you all are seeing either on YouTube or on your favorite streaming service. But I also wanted to mention that you've heard me mention my business accelerator, Ready, Set, Go Consult. Most of the people, as I mentioned before, who participated in the accelerator or in the client attraction masterclass were either in their 40s or 50s. And, it was really encouraging to see that here are people that understand that they have, 10, 20, 30 years of expertise that they can, flip into a consulting business or a freelance business or some other service business. And my accelerator actually takes them to the next level so that they're moving into business growth and or even scaling their businesses. So just want to make sure that you all were aware of that. You can go to readysetgoconsult.com and you can download our free ebook or watch our free masterclass. So just know that that resource is there if starting a business is a part of your life redesign or one of the life changes that you want to implement. So I'll finally leave with this quote from Franz Kafka. As you all know, I try to leave with and end the show with a quote from someone about aging. And this particular quote is anyone who keeps the ability to see beauty never grows old. And I just, like all of the other quotes, I really like that one because, again, the name of this podcast is Age Has No Limit. So there we are. Until the next episode, remember, age has no limit.